This first short lecture is going to focus on some of the history behind physical activity and the field of kinesiology. We'll talk briefly about some of the subdisciplines of kinesiology that you will be exposed to this semester, and also some of the key organizations that support the field of kinesiology. So some of the things we're going to cover include the ancient Olympiad and talk about the past focus on sports and competition, and then also other physical developments in recent history, like the modern Olympics as opposed to the ancient Olympics, and the growth of the field of kinesiology. We'll talk about some of the subdisciplines of kinesiology and the organizations. So here's your learning outcomes for this first lecture. And here we go, ancient history of kinesiology. So for starters, kinesiology is broadly defined as the study of human movement, or the study of a human as a mover. So kines refers to movement, ology study. So taken together, what kinesiology does is studies the principles of behind human movement, including the mechanics, the physiology, and also the anatomy. Going back to ancient times, as you're well aware, some of the more important survival skills revolved around gardening, planting crops, harvesting, hunting, constructing shelters, etc., and also preparing for combat if there was any type of conflict. So in other words, back in the day, you had to really be physically active to stay alive. Just to survive, you had to be very physically active. Some of the early promoters of physical activity include Herodotus, who studied gymnastics and medicine, basically paved the way for the study of health and physical activity. This is back in 480 BC, so this is many, many, many years ago. So Hippocrates also, which you've probably heard of, wrote a book, Regimen, which describes the need of exercise to maintain health, and he was considered the father of preventative medicine. And then Galen also wrote a book called On Hygiene about the healthfulness of exercise. So the point here is that even centuries ago, even though we think of kinesiology as a relatively recent field and a newer field of study, the people knew about the benefits and the health benefits of physical activity centuries ago. So going back to the ancient Olympiad, which actually started as a celebration of the body's physical capacity, and basically it was where people would compete, as you're well aware, in different sports. The first ancient Olympics dates back to 776 BC. So obviously we still have the Olympics, which are now referred to as the modern Olympics, but there was a break between the ancient Olympics and the modern Olympics. So the Greeks held the last ancient Olympics, or the 4th century, and then there was little advancement in physical activity and sport over the next several centuries. So the question is, why do you think these civilizations turned their attention away from sports and games? If you think about it, it makes sense that they had more important things to worry about, like survival. They had conflicts, wars, battles, etc. So they had to turn their attention away from these more recreational activities and focus more on survival skills. So getting back to the Olympics, in 1896, the rebirth of the Olympics came around in Athens, and this was about 1,500 years after the conclusion of the ancient Olympics. And these are the Olympics that we have today. So the Olympics today, even though we just call them Olympics, they're referred to as more the modern Olympics. So obviously they've grown, as you're well aware. The first modern Olympics had only 5 sports. Most recently about 64. So, and then as you probably are aware, there's a summer and winter Olympics with alternating every 2 years. And then there's also different Olympics. In addition to the Olympics that we know and love, there's also a Paralympics for those with physical disabilities, Deaf Olympics for those with hearing issues, and also Special Olympics for those with intellectual disabilities. And Olympics have become so mainstream that very few events will actually cause a disruption in the Olympics, but there have been a few. World War II back in 1916. Those games were canceled. I mean, World War One, 1916 games were canceled, and World War II led to the 1940 and 44 Olympic Games canceled. So again, getting back to what we were saying earlier, sport and fitness will take a lower priority when survival is in question. And then most recently, which everybody now is familiar with, COVID-19, the pandemic disrupted the 2020 Olympics. So again, when sport and fitness kind of take a back seat to survival. But again, in the grand scheme of things, very few events actually disrupt the Olympics. So focusing now on different aspects of kinesiology. So some key terms that you might be associated with, and these are more broader than the field of kinesiology, but an academic discipline, like kinesiology is considered to be an academic discipline. It's a branch of knowledge that is taught or researched at a college or university. Kinesiology is an interdisciplinary field, so meaning that it's related to more than one branch of knowledge. So if you think about kinesiology, it's very broad. It has subdisciplines in social sciences, movement sciences, and even biological sciences. So it's very interdisciplinary. And it has several subdisciplines. And so a subdiscipline is a field of study that is related to part of a broader field of study. So for instance, physiology or exercise physiology is a subdiscipline of kinesiology. Biomechanics is a subdiscipline of kinesiology. Sports psychology is a subdiscipline of kinesiology. So we have a lot of different subdisciplines within our field, and here's a list. So you can see the broad range of subdisciplines within kinesiology. And throughout this semester, we're going to touch on most of these to expose you to the different subdisciplines and talk a little bit about their history and what's involved in those subdisciplines. So things such as biomechanics, psychology, physiology, philosophy, motor learning and control, motor development, sociology, physical education. All of these things are under the umbrella of kinesiology. So how do you decide what subdiscipline that you may want to focus on? So there's many subdisciplines, obviously, but it really depends on your interest and what your level of interest is as far as continuing your education. So a lot of these things you can will be proficient with a bachelor's degree. Some require a master's degree. Some require a doctoral degree. So a little bit about our programs at San Francisco State. We offer a bachelor's degree, a Bachelor of Science in kinesiology, with concentrations in either exercise and movement science or what we call the Integrated Teacher Education Program in Physical Education, the ITEP program, and which is geared towards those who have an interest in teaching physical education, primarily in public or private schools. Within the exercise and movement science concentration, your electives can be tailored to focus on what you're interested in. That might be exercise science, it might be more movement science, or it might be more social science. And then as far as graduate education, there's several options. So at San Francisco State, we offer a Master of Science degree in kinesiology, but there are some other options related to kinesiology. And then for those who want to extend their education further, there are doctoral degrees in kinesiology, or whether that's something like a DPT, or Doctor in Physical Therapy, EDD, which is more education-based, or a PhD, where you focus more on the science of kinesiology. So who's drawn to kinesiology? Usually it's going to be individuals with a love of physical activity, sport, or exercise. Personally, that's how I got interested in kinesiology. Some become interested in it due to the rehabilitation aspect of it, and those who want to help rehabilitate those, or those who want to help others, and then those who just want to advocate for physical and mental wellness. So take a few minutes just to think about why you're studying kinesiology and what brought you to this field. So organizations that support kinesiology. So here's three major ones. So before I talk about these, each of the subdisciplines of kinesiology generally have their own professional organization. So that's in addition to these. So these organizations are more broad in nature and focus on the overall field of kinesiology. So the American Kinesiology Association, or AKA, so it offers membership to students. Also, our department, our kinesiology department, is a member of the AKA. Have a few publications associated with them, including Kinesiology Today and Kinesiology Review. The National Academy of Kinesiology, which is focused primarily on graduate education. And then we also have the National Association for Kinesiology in Higher Education, which has a few publications, including the International Journal of Kinesiology in Higher Education, Quest, and Research Quarterly. And these publications, the published articles, basically related to things in the field of kinesiology, whether it's exercise-related studies or motor behavior type studies, or even physical education type studies. So, in conclusion, kinesiology has grown from ancient times, and then, despite whatever subdiscipline you may be thinking about or talking about, all subdisciplines of kinesiology tend to focus on improving the human body and through physical activity of some sort. And then the chosen academic discipline that you focus on will help develop your career trajectory. And also, there are several different organizations available to help guide you and within the field of kinesiology. And then if you do focus on a specific subdiscipline, there's also, within those subdisciplines, there's also professional organizations that can help with career opportunities, certifications, etc.